Well, I've been asked to set the context for today's proceedings, and what I'm going to be focusing on is trying to give you a brief introduction to inclusionary zoning. So here's inclusionary zoning 101. I'm going to cover perhaps three major topics very briefly. What is inclusionary zoning? What are its main features? And finally, briefly, what is the experience of both U.S. and Canada with this tool? So, what is inclusionary zoning? Inclusionary zoning is a way for the municipalities to use the regulatory powers that they have over land use and development to require private developers to provide some modest level of affordable housing in their otherwise market rate projects. The tool is widely used in the United States. It is not used at all in the same way in Canada. We can speculate why, but I suspect some of the reason can be found in the two words that I've underlined. The notion of using regulatory powers and the notion of requiring developers to provide the housing. With regard to regulatory powers, we still have this mindset in this country that affordable housing can and only will be provided by the use of government funding. The notion that we can use regulatory powers to also provide affordable housing is a notion that is still new to this country, and in some cases revolutionary, and certainly one that is not being tolerated by our provincial masters. So this notion that we have to change our thinking is a fundamental problem that we have. It's a change in mindset about how we can use our regulatory powers. It's going to be fundamental to have to be fundamentally changed before indeed we embark on using these powers. Now, I'm going to go into the vexing question of mandatory versus voluntary, the other aspect of the requirement, the notion that we can require the provision of affordable housing. In the U.S., there are indeed two types of inclusionary zoning. Mandatory, in which the developers are required to provide affordable housing. There's no question, they have to provide it as a condition of the development permit. In voluntary, developers are encouraged to provide it. They're encouraged by incentives, but at the end of the day, the developer has a choice to whether to provide affordable housing or not. Now, this topic will probably come up a number of times in the course of the day, and I don't want to dwell on it too much at the moment. But let me say very briefly, the simple conclusion coming out of the United States, out of all of their work, is simply this: mandatory works and voluntary does not work. This is not a matter of debate in the U.S. The issue in the debate is over. So in this case, we really have to consider the mandatory as the only way to go. In the course of the rest of the discussion I have to present today, I will be using the term exclusionary zoning to mean exclusively and only mandatory.